Saj Issa. Welcome to Speak Up St. Louis.
Thank you.
It's so exciting to have you on. For folks that don't know, Saj and I went to school together. Well, you wouldn't know, so I'm telling you for the first time. Saj and I went to school together, and it's just to see your art practice and how you are personally growing is really exciting. And so first, happy to see that, but then also second, congratulations on the Great Rivers Biennial exhibition at the Contemporary Art Museum, St. Louis. This was a really beautiful exhibition, and I'm so glad that you're a recipient.
I appreciate you so much, friend. Honestly, thank you.
Yeah, no, this will be. I've been looking forward to this, and so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So, if you want to share a little bit with the folks that are listening about, who is Saj Issa?
Hi, thanks for having me. I am an artist born and raised in St. Louis. Grew up between here and West Bank, Palestine. And I had been passionate about art since a very young age. I earned my BFA at Webster University, where I met Q, and in a printmaking class.
Yep.
And
Tom Lank.
I don't think you know this, but I associate koi fish with you.
That's hilarious, because I made that koi fish print.
Yeah.
That's funny because I recently pulled that out. I kept the really good one, and then I trashed the rest of them because I was trying to make space for new things. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was my first encounter of meeting a student athlete who is also interested in art, and I was just like,
a wannabe student athlete. They didn't last long. Once I found out that being a artist is like a full-time thing. I realized that, if I'm going to be serious about this, I got to drop something.
And a really good artist
Thank you.
So yeah, I didn't get to watch you play basketball, so I can't speak on that.
I was nice. I was cool. I wouldn't, nothing too crazy, but hey,
Yeah.
Trey, Trey saw me hoop them Christmas tournaments. I balled out a little bit, just a little bit.
So yeah, that's how I was, very grateful to meet you in undergrad and still continue, being friends throughout these years. That's been really beautiful. And then following that, I earned my MFA at UCLA, came back to St. Louis, and worked on this GRB exhibition. And yeah.
And just make
full-time artist
doing your thing.
Yeah.
And which is really cool because, just to see, like I said, the trajectory from your time at Webster, but then also being able to come visit you out at UCLA and seeing the things that you're doing now is really exciting. And, when I walked through the GRB exhibition, three things that came to mind that are also in the write-up about the exhibition is a sense of home, landscapes, and flora. And there's a lot to unpack in that. But, when we've talked to other guests on the podcast, some of them have, multicultural, multi-country backgrounds as well, too, in regards to this idea of sense of place, sense of home. And yeah, so for you, you talked about, living in St. Louis, but then also the relationship and also family and also living in the West Bank as well, too. So talk to me about what that relationship too is from an idea of the sense of home. Mm-hmm. And what does home mean to you?
Yeah. Home is where family resides, familiarity, and love. If you can go back to a place and there's love, that's home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that a lot of what I have portrayed in this exhibition in particular was the exploration of the Palestinian landscape more than the concept of home for me. Mm-hmm. And, at the beginning of when I had presented the proposal for this exhibition, it was really focused on the analysis and my exploration of the Palestinian landscape, culturally, historically, and geographically. And so following that and the acceptance of, being a GRB participant, was when all the political upheaval in Palestine and Israel came about. And even though my intention of creating this exhibition in the beginning was to resist the politicalization of the landscapes, that was something that I felt was always just an injustice to Palestinians who just want to portray the beauty in our lives, the beauty in our culture and our experience. It's always it's always bombarded and obstructed by this overarching black cloud that has to be addressed. And I think that was something, my intention in the beginning was to refrain from addressing that, because that's something that I think that really refrains from allowing me to explore and a different creative side and art practice.
Yeah, and to me that makes a lot of sense in regards to showing life for what it is, rather than for the heaviness that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, whether through news, and then also, for some folks, their actual, the realization of what's going on as well. And so thank you for sharing that, because I think that at least when I'm thinking of a sense of home, I think it is a lot of what you're just talking about there. It's a sense of where love is at. And because when I was even thinking about it while I was driving over here, I was like, man, what is home to me? And, of course it's where my parents are at, or where my grandparents is at, but even getting it down to just the real particulars of home for me is going to my granny's house and sitting on the steps and the smell of the house and knowing that, there's a Canada Dry in the fridge and things like that. And she's probably got greens on the, stove, or when I was younger, spending time over there, and staying the night, and the smell of grits in the morning and things like that. And so it's interesting how all these different experiences make up what home is for us.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that over the years, as both of my grandmas passed away, may they rest in peace, and having and visiting Palestine without them being there kind of made it feel less like home. And so the question at hand is, if these, ancestors and people no longer are present, what does feel like home? And so I think that having to navigate a world without grandmas is a really, really dark and sad realization. But, thinking about other ways to connect to a place, and it be, landscape and history, and, finding out, learning more about your ancestry. I think that is also a place to kind of tail back to at home as well.
So speaking of ancestry, have you found moments to, maybe the word is not necessarily better understand that, and maybe it's not even reclaiming that in a certain way, but how is ancestry and your work are you in conversation around that when you're thinking about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So the landscape and forests that are part of the exhibition really tie into that. Ceramic is a traditional craft medium in Palestinian culture and folk art, and pottery is part of my art practice as well. And what I'd presented are hand-thrown vessels that reference the Mediterranean amphora forms. And, they were hand glazed and hand thrown. And an integral part of like the ingredient I incorporated in the ceramics were the 10th century ceramic shards that I've excavated from ancient Bethel, which is contemporarily known today as Beitin, which is the village that my family is from. And so upon my last visit to Palestine in January 2024, I was there for a couple weeks visiting my grandfather. And, you know, I was removed from like my art practice flow that I had going on in St. Louis. And I was thinking, okay, well, how can I make use of this time in a time of like political upheaval and just like, you know, high stakes of just like maneuvering in this landscape, you know? I looked at an ancient map of Beitin and found that there used to be this ceramic factory down the street from where my parents' house is. And I was like, let me go check out and see what's there. I come to find out that there's an olive tree farm currently there, and a very small one compared to the larger ones that exist in Palestine. Nonetheless, it was an olive tree farm, so I, without permission, woke up one morning, dug into the soil, and found a bunch of these ceramic shards. And I mean, it was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe that, like, it's just like part of the soil. Mm-hmm. So I cleaned off these shards, took them to an archaeologist, and got them verified. And so it, in fact, was from the pottery factory that is beneath that olive tree farm today. And so I'm thinking a lot about, you know, the landscape that lies beneath the surface of today. Similarly to the kind of landscapes that lie beneath the surface of, you know, St. Louis, which, you know, Ron Young incorporates in part of his work too, mm-hmm. and kind of commentates on that. So, when I had cleaned off those ceramic shards and wanted to bring them back with me to America, you know, it's illegal for Palestinians to dig. It's illegal for Palestinians to excavate any artifacts or collect them. So I had brought them back through the border with me, and Border Control found those shards on an X-ray. And they pulled me aside, opened my bag, found these shards, and they're like, "Where did you get these from?" And I fibbed, and I was like, "Yeah, my grandma's pot broke, and I'm putting back her amphora." And I mean, it wouldn't take a genius to know that the shards are very dulled cornered, and they weren't sharp. He was like, you know, he called Cap, and he was like, "No, they're not." So he called his supervisor over, and he was like, "Hey, she has a really old artifact. We need to look into this." And his supervisor was like, "I don't get it. Is this a drug or something? Is she like trying to import a drug?" And he's just like, "No, it's an old artifact. Like, you know, it's illegal. Like I said, you can be fined." And so, and you also have to have a permit. So anyway, his supervisor was like, "Okay, is it a drug?" And he was like, "No." He's like, "Then let it pass." He was irritated. He showed an irritation because he was like pulled aside for this like irrelevant thing. He was like, just go about my day. And that was great. But you know, I was traveling with my mom at the time, who doesn't know, you know, wasn't aware of these things. I thought it's always better to ask for forgiveness and permission, of course. So yeah. But it took some time for me to figure out what I wanted to do with those shards. I had pulverized them and incorporated it into the glaze and ceramic forms of the amphora, the landscape amphoras. And then the remaining shards of them, I had my friend Ethan, who works at a third-degree glass factory. I sketched out this like glass amphora that I wanted him to hand blow, and put the remaining shards into that pot, and also had that, and you know, alongside the landscape amphoras. And the title of that pot or artwork is "If I Don't Take It, Someone Else Will." And so, you know, it's kind of like on the nose, and I didn't care because that speaks to a lot of like the black and white narrative that exists today politically. But also, I wanted to kind of consider what it means to take an artifact, you know, who owns artifacts, who gets to determine what to do with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was, and thinking about power structures and what it means to like take power back into my own hands. And very rarely do you find artists being the ones to determine what happens with artifacts. And I just didn't want to treat it so preciously. So I remelted it into my ceramics.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that you remelted it, so it's really interesting that the actual landscape is within the actual the pots. And I'm sorry, what's the correct term?
Amphora.
Amphoras that you are displaying. And for me, like even hearing that story, that doesn't even surprise me knowing you. So side note, so Saj brought up like the koi fish. Like what makes me always think of Saj is when I had my BFA exhibition.
Oh my God.
And made these works. I made this tall sugar tower. And lo and behold, I get a video of, you know, and as everybody knows, you're not supposed to touch art. And sure enough, like Saj gets some of the sugar and tastes it. And so every time I think of Saj, I think about, like my work is, you know, it hits on multiple different senses. So shout out to Saj for taking the extra step to make sure that, you know, the work tasted right.
I just wanted to make sure it was sugar, not salt, you know, because salt's cheaper than sugar. I don't know, some artists find shortcuts in like the materials, and I just had to be the one to verify.
I went to Sam's and bought like, it was like a 50-pound bag of sugar. It was huge. And I still have some of that sugar to this day.
Amazing.
Like wrapped up in multiple bags and then put in a plastic bin. I don't know if I'm going to ever do anything with it. Tasteful. Right. It's sweet. So yeah, but yeah, no, I think that, you know, what your work is discussing and what you're beginning to wrestle with in regards to who has, you know, decision-making power over these different items is really important, but also this reclaiming and also this repurposing as well too that you've done with the work really shows up in a beautiful way, especially with the ceramic pieces. And so you had talked about you know, landscapes, and we had just recently talked to Ronald Young, one of the other Great Rivers Biennial recipients, and showing at the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis. And we had talked about this idea of items that are, you know, especially with his work with scavenging and pulling items from his neighborhood and around North St. Louis City, as items that are charged, that have memories, that have their own, you know, they have their own purpose, their own design, and then he's, scavenging them and reimagining them in a sense. Do you feel that, you know, when you're doing the work, especially with the different shards or some of the different pottery work, especially, or just any work around your practice, does that idea also come up within your work?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, it was at that moment that I realized, you know, sometimes there's things that an artist just can't birth from their own hands. It takes history to create that, charged meaning and kind of like that ancestral spirit that exists within these old things. And it's lived histories. Yeah, and that was one way that it was presented. The other way that I think that it was presented was the kind of the activation of the poppy paintings. You know, it was one thing for me to paint them physically one by one, but it was another for them to be activated in demonstrations. And, you know, just yesterday, it was really beautiful for me to, you know, be here, and somebody from that poppy march had come up to me and said that he held one of the paintings at that march. And I didn't recall giving it to him or distributing, but he was part of it. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that's in just the way that through this, what I find interesting around that is how you're building this, I guess, interconnected community around that as well too. So the fact that somebody else can come into the museum and have a direct correlation to the work, not just because, oh, I understand the work or I read up on it or I saw, they know you, but it was like, but the actual physical action that went behind it. That's not something that you typically see, in work. It's usually like, oh, this artist in the studio. Okay, I've created this piece. Cool, but like the fact that there's other people that have this deeper connection to the work.
Yeah.
I find that very powerful.
Thank you. I think that was something that, for this like regional biennial that I wanted to portray and implement as, being part of the exhibition is, it's really nice when you A, involve community, and B, just like make it a little bit more personable, I think that, growing up and just from like the books that I've read and, what my art practice and my, my activism is very part of my art practice as well. But reading, those books that taught me about the parallels between systemic oppression in St. Louis and Palestine, and taking it a little step further by, it be art and activism was a really, I guess, like healing thing for me, learning about those parallels and then also allowing the St. Louis community and activist community be a part of this project too was a very healing thing for me.
For sure. And then, so for folks that don't know, can you describe what a poppy is? Because, I had seen it through the work, but I've never seen one in person. Like, what is a poppy?
Yeah. So poppy flower is this gorgeous, vibrant cadmium red flower that blossoms in the springtime in Palestine, over the hilltops and various regions around the country. And mythologically, it's believed that where a poppy grows is where a martyr had passed. And so that is ultimately like what the poppy flower symbolized for me in the paintings. I painted one for each day that the genocide prevailed in Gaza. And there was this kind of formula that I implemented when I painted them. It was, the formula was a cadmium yellow base, followed by a cadmium red splash, followed by a 5-minute painting of a poppy flower, and lastly an olive green core that drips down at the center of the flower. And so I wanted to kind of allude to the physicality and the imagery that I've seen in the past year, and but also it be a symbol that people can hold at these protests and demonstrations. I'm very anti-flag, anti-nationalism, and patriotism, and so I wanted the collection of these to be a new symbol that people at demonstrations can hold and be under the same umbrella.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was also curious too, because, seeing the pictures of the poppy paintings individually with folks holding them up, but then, well, first I saw that you were putting them together at your studio, and then to see them up on the wall was, especially at the museum, was something totally different. And so what was the thought process of actually I'm assuming did you sew them together? Of sewing those paintings together, maybe rather than keeping them as individuals.
Yeah. So I think that it was an aesthetic decision for them to be together. Many people had questioned whether or not I wanted to allude to the history of like quilting and textile. And, if you see that, that's your analysis.
Cool.
Yeah. But I think that, tile making and the multiplicity and aesthetic of tiles being part of my practice had allowed me to kind of envision the poppies being very presented in multiplicity and like in this like geometric-esque form. So that was the kind of aesthetic decision that I made there. But I also just wanted to see them compositionally much larger.
For sure.
And it felt very powerful. It felt like I was able to come into the museum, and it was the first time that I was able to see it installed because the height of my studio was only like 8 feet tall. So it was the first time that I was able to see it presented that way that I intended and look at my grief on the wall. I think the hardest part about all of it is having to just talk about these things in real time, and artists when they're giving talks, there's some distance, especially artists that work in the realm of political identity and political identity, race, etc. There's time to distance us from those atrocities and our historical racial persecutions. But
and then there's times where
there's times when it's happening in real time.
How can you how can you separate? Yeah, how can you separate one from the other? And it's almost in my mind, it's almost, and this is just my personal opinion, it's when it gets that deep, it's almost a disservice if I don't talk about this.
Yeah.
It's for me not to shed light on it. Yeah, that's the balance of that in regards to not only, because your personal art practice does take on who you are as well, you too, and the things that are going on around you and the experiences that you have. And so it's just why wouldn't I not talk about this? Yeah,
it's not necessarily why wouldn't I talk about it, but it's how can I talk about it in the least aggressive way possible that doesn't make me feel or look too emotional, especially in front of strangers, especially in a society that is looking for those gotcha moments. It's been extremely difficult to navigate, but I will say that the museum has been extremely welcoming, and however way I wish to present myself throughout this exhibition, whatever language I wanted to use, and just utter freedom of the way that I just wanted to talk about it, so I'm very grateful for that.
And I guess maybe that's another question that I would ask too, is because it's this, and maybe I don't have the question fully formulated, I'm still going to talk it through, is this feeling of the fact that I have to and I'm saying I from the sense of this, just me putting it out there, of having to validate this experience, this trauma, these events that are going on, and I have to put it up on this wall for you to even engage with it. To me, that's highly frustrating, but then also I feel like it is such a disservice as a society to say that, we're not going to engage with something until it is right in front of us.
Yeah.
But then even folks then won't do it because I don't know if it's just scare or fear. It could be a combination of the two. Or it's just folks actually don't care.
I would say it's the latter. I I want to focus on all the positive feedback that I've gotten throughout this, exhibition. But I will say that it was really difficult for me to lead some walkthroughs and have people that I've witnessed very engaging with the entire museum, and then be intrigued by my exhibition and read the wall text and immediately just like forfeit, like just
Totally check out.
Totally check out, and them not know who I am, not know that I was present to witness that, and just see, like head shakes and just like, I got to see that in real time, and I thought that was, really, it was obviously hurtful, but I think that, for it to be just the mere presentation and the word Palestine be on the museum wall was a very difficult thing for a lot of people to engage with. And but like I said, you got to focus on the positive. You have to focus on the people that want to enrich their lives in education, and their diverse experience with learning about the world,
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, and the fact that you have that insight. I mean, obviously, from day to day, it carries differently for you. But just for you to be able to step back and, I mean, the the patience, I mean, you could say the maturity, but it's like to allow other folks to express how they like to have that expression about the work, and to just let it rest, because it's not about you.
Yeah.
That is something internally they have to work through. I think that is, I keep saying the word powerful, but I do think, but it's just the word that comes to mind. That is a level of restraint. That's a level of, there's a lot of words that I'm thinking about right now, but just to be able to, because I mean, when we're thinking about, the work itself, whether somebody checks out or not, it's like, that's their expression to the work. Like that is their relationship to the work.
The relationship to the work, but also artists need to question like what they want to choose their role to be, and I have determined that mine is not for the mere purpose of persuasion. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not to, so I've determined that my role is for art to be an outlet for my personal expression, grievances, and celebrations.
Yeah.
And invite other people to, indulge in that with me. But it's not to be, I don't want it to be confrontational, I think that by nature I am a personality that's very confrontational, but I don't need my art to do that for me.
For sure. And so, and especially for artists like yourself that are also, dealing with at times very heavy conversations within the work. I'm curious on what's that balance of, I guess, joy and fulfillment, and kind of play that comes with your work, especially when you're dealing with heavy subject matter at times.
Yeah. So I think that the one artwork that I included that answers that question and express that thoroughly was the plein air performance. So at the same time that I was there last January and had excavated those 10th century pottery shards, I had every morning I'd start off the routine the same way, which was a walk around the village. And my parents own a plot of land that is on the outskirt of Beitin. And the plot of land overlooks the rolling hills that face Jerusalem, as well as the settlement that is the hilltop across from my parents' land. And there's a zone restrictment placed onto my parents' land. They can't build or plant anything on top of there because it is too near the neighboring settlements that had been established within the past, I want to say, like decade or so. So needless to say, they were never able to put anything there. And I thought, well, if they can't plant anything there, why can't I just paint there one day? I'm going to, bring a kettle of tea and my easel and paints, and I'm going to paint a plein air painting. And so I was thinking like, okay, I can't physically walk to Jerusalem from where I'm at, and I can't sit on that hilltop across from me. So what if I can experience it differently by overlooking and painting this plot of land across from me? And what if I painted it, and what I hold in my hands, the painting itself, be the land that I possess? And so the performance and the painting itself was the act of my land grab. And that's what I titled the painting, was Land Grab.
Yeah. And for folks who have seen a snapshot of it, it was also on the cover of our forum as well too, which was super exciting.
Yeah.
You've been up to some stuff this past year.
That was a very surreal and exciting moment for sure. And I mean, it was crazy because when I painted that plein air painting, I propped my iPhone on a tripod to record myself, and for the purpose of surveillance of me. I wanted, if anything were to happen to me, it was to be video evidence that I was just painting. Because 2 weeks prior to me sitting there and painting, a man from my village was shot dead by crossing that plot of land, selling olive oil. And it was really risky for me to be there. And that was just like my mere act of like resistance, but also like a sardonic act, leisure is a very bereft thing for Palestinians to experience. And it's not something that is seen very often these days. Everyone is kind of, going from point A to point B, going about their day that way, and also just like the leisure happens within the domesticity. So I wanted to challenge that. And needless to say, the recording from that became a performance. It wasn't intentionally, I didn't intentionally start it as that, but it later became the performance to this painting. And so I included that in the museum, as well as the painting on the opposite side of the wall. Yeah,
no, I think the exhibition overall, and also just where your practice is going, is, the multi-layered approach that you are bringing to it in regards to not just only medium, but also the thought and practice as well too, in regards to how you're thinking about color theory, in regards to how you're thinking about material. Like all these things are really coming together, I think, in an exciting way to, and so for me on the outside looking in, it's just like, it's really great to be able to not only to be able to sit and think about the work from my own personal experience, but then also thinking about it myself in this larger context, but then also to be able to see how you are navigating these conversations with, I think, a level of grace, but also at the same time making sure that your voice is being heard. The dual approach of that to me is something that, I think, is really special.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate it. I was just trying to look up this quote by this book called The Prophet by the writer Khalil Gibran, which is a book about, spiritual teachings of how to live a life in freedom and prosperity, just like a universal way of living life and its approach to when times get going rough. And so there was this segment from the book of this this woman who asked a question in regards to elegance. What do you have to say? What do you have to speak to about elegance when it comes to the times ending or when one is going through a difficult time? And so the villagers all kind of question and kind of were like thinking like, why are you considering elegance in a time when we're about to our lives are ending? And so the prophet in the book took that question into consideration very seriously and, spoke to about the importance of elegance because, and what it means to keep your composure, because elegance is not the way that you necessarily look or carry yourself. It's about the way that you're remembered. And so I think that when I had read that in the book many years ago, I always question what it means to be elegant and what it means to keep your composure. And so that's something that I question a lot in my own art practice, and something that I think that many artists who are dealing with these very heavy topics of systemic oppression and, things that are very fatal and life detrimental, how do you wish to be remembered and how do you wish to just move through life, in general? And so that's something that I kind of question when, what it means to make art during wartime. Yeah. Just how do you keep your composure through those very difficult times?
Yeah. How do you keep your composure? How do you carry yourself? How do you, how do you keep your dignity through all these different things as well? Is something that I think about. Thank you for sharing that. How do you keep elegance through tough times? Yeah. Saj, I really, like I was saying earlier, I really am so grateful that you came onto the podcast to share your story, your practice, because I think as we continue to add stories, it just continues to give a much fuller understanding and context of what St. Louis is. Because, St. Louis doesn't get the greatest rep at times. And so to have stories like yours, stories of resilience, elegance and grace, and how you are carrying yourself and what your practice is doing, not only just for this, the landscape of St. Louis, but wherever you go. We're super grateful for that. And so thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And again, congratulations on the Great Rivers Biennial. This was a great body of work.
I'm very grateful to be here sharing space with you and conversation, and just very grateful for your presence and wisdom as well. I'm very grateful for us to be able to be part of this St. Louis community.
Yeah, thank you, friend.
Yeah.
And as we are wrapping up, I have a two-part question for you that we ask all of our guests. One, what do you love most about St. Louis? And the second part is, what do you most want to see change?
What I love most about St. Louis is its potential. I think that, I've bbeen to other cities where it feels like a utopia there. Everything's like figured out. It's like perfect, the streets clean, everyone's being paid fair wage, etc. Like it's a perfect place. But yeah, when I visited those places, it was a very boring place to be at because there wasn't a challenge to kind of overcome. There wasn't something to like a project to or initiative to like be inspired to change. Maybe that's my personal relationship to, things that issues that exist in the world. But I think that's a very selfish way of living life. It's like, just because, this utopia is thriving doesn't mean that there's not other places of the world that could use an uplift. And so I would say my favorite part of St. Louis is the potential that exists here. It's a very beautiful city. It's very, I think it offers a lot in terms of, the resources that are available here. Could it use more? Absolutely. My other second favorite thing is Forest Park. Thank you, Forever Forest Park crew. I love you guys. They're doing an incredible job there. And then what was your second question?
What do you most want to see change?
Diversity and better food. I think that
Better food? Some people would say there's really great food here.
I think that the chefs need to step up their game.
Hey, chefs out there, if you're listening, what you call it, Saj needs a good plate.
Can I give one shout out though to
For
my
sure,
favorite?
of course.
I will say, Sado and Indo, best restaurant in St. Louis. Thank you, Nick Bogner.
I got to get over to Indo soon. I've been over to Sado, but I need to get over to Indo. But it's been a minute though, so Saj is letting everybody know where to go.
Yeah, put me on candied garlic. I know, amazing.
Candied garlic.
Yeah.
Something new to try now, Trey. We gotta we know where we going. No, and then also to for folks that are listening and want to keep up with your practice, where can they go to find more out about you and your work?
That's a great question. I would say my website is more kind of, professional. My Instagram, I do post, what's coming up on there. I am a little bit more comical on there though, but yeah, definitely Instagram and my website.
What's the website?
SajIssa.com.
There it is. So folks, go follow her work, keep up with the practice as she's growing it. It's going to be good. Saj, again, thank you so much, friend. Continue to be an overcomer. Love you too.